The Painted Bridge, Episode 1. First Cracks. The rain had stopped by the time Alexandra Morrison crossed Blackfriars Bridge, but the Thames still reflected the city's lights in fractured patterns across its surface. She pulled her Burberry trench tighter against the October chill, her heels clicking against wet pavement as she navigated the cobblestones of Southwark. The Painted Bridge pub glowed warm ahead, its Victorian facade promising refuge from the cold and the particularly brutal week she'd just survived at Chambers. Inside, the noise hit her first, the familiar Friday evening roar of professionals decompressing. Alex scanned the crowd automatically, a barrister's habit of reading rooms. There, in their usual corner booth beneath the original 1880s Painted Bridge mural that gave the pub its name, she spotted the familiar faces that had anchored her life for the past decade. "Alex!" Natasha Blackwood waved from the booth, her engagement ring catching the light. "We ordered you a G&T. You look like you need it." "You have no idea." Alex slid into the booth beside her best friend, accepting the drink gratefully. 3 depositions, 2 court appearances, and a senior partner who seems to think sleep is optional. "Welcome to Friday," said James Hartley from across the table, loosening his tie. The architect looked as exhausted as Alex felt, his usually immaculate appearance slightly rumpled. "At least you won your motion this morning. I saw the text in the group chat." "Barely." Alex took a long sip of her gin and tonic, feeling the tension in her shoulders begin to ease. The opposing counsel was prepared. Too prepared, actually. I think someone's been feeding them information. Office politics or actual espionage? This from Sophie Chen, Natasha's fiancée, who worked in cybersecurity for a finance firm. Her dark eyes were sharp with interest. "Unclear, but Richard Morrison is investigating." Alex mentioned her mentor's name carefully. The senior partner at Morrison and Blackwood had taken her under his wing when she joined Chambers 5 years ago, but his protective instincts sometimes felt suffocating. Natasha squeezed Alex's hand. "Forget work. Tonight is about celebrating. Sophie and I finally set a date. June 15th. And before you ask, yes, you're maid of honor. And yes, we expect you to give an absolutely mortifying speech." "I would expect nothing less," Alex said, managing a genuine smile. She was happy for them, truly. Natasha and Sophie had been together for 3 years, and their relationship had the kind of easy warmth that Alex had stopped believing she'd ever find for herself. The door opened, bringing a gust of cold air and 3 more members of their friend group. Daniel Kim, a cardiothoracic surgeon at St. Thomas's, entered first, followed by Emma Wright and Thomas Vale. But it was the man behind them who made Alex's breath catch unexpectedly. Marcus Ashford. She'd met him exactly twice before, once at a legal conference 18 months ago where they debated case law over expensive whiskey, and once at Natasha's birthday party last spring where they'd barely spoken. Both times, she'd felt the pull of attraction and firmly ignored it. Marcus was brilliant, successful, and according to the legal gossip mill, chronically single by choice. He was also exactly the kind of distraction she couldn't afford. "Sorry we're late," Daniel said, shedding his jacket. Emergency surgery ran long, and these 2 insisted on waiting. "Marcus is joining us," Emma announced, her tone carrying an edge Alex couldn't quite read. Emma, recently divorced and navigating the brutal world of dating apps, had been increasingly sharp-edged at these gatherings. "He just transferred to Daniel's hospital. Cardiothoracic fellow." Alex's mind stuttered. Marcus was a surgeon? She'd thought he was a barrister. They'd discussed. "Different Marcus Ashford," the man in question said, his eyes meeting hers with unmistakable recognition and something else, amusement perhaps, or challenge. "The barrister you're thinking of is my cousin. I get that a lot. I'm the one who actually saves lives instead of just arguing about them." "Debatable," Alex shot back, recovering her composure. "Last I checked, the legal system was fairly essential to civilization." "Last I checked, people with stopped hearts don't care much about civilization." The table laughed, breaking the tension. Thomas Vale, the group's resident serial dater and marketing executive, made room in the booth. "Careful, Marcus. Alex doesn't lose arguments. It's literally her job." "Then this should be interesting," Marcus said, sliding in directly across from her. For the next hour, Alex tried to focus on the conversation flowing around her. Natasha and Sophie's wedding plans, Daniel's hospital politics, Emma's disastrous hinge date earlier that week, Thomas's latest conquest. But she was acutely aware of Marcus across the table, the way his hands moved when he talked, the intelligence in his gray eyes, the laugh lines that appeared when Daniel told an inappropriate story about a patient who'd arrived in A&E with a peculiar injury. "Earth to Alex," James said, nudging her. "You okay? You've been quiet." "Just tired," she lied. "Long week." But when she looked up, Marcus was watching her with an expression that suggested he knew exactly what had distracted her. The group began to splinter as the evening wore on. Sophie and Natasha left first, pleading an early morning appointment with a wedding planner. Emma departed with Thomas, though Alex suspected that was more about Emma's need for distraction than any real romantic interest. James received a call from a client and stepped outside, leaving Alex alone at the table with Daniel and Marcus. "I should go too," Daniel said, checking his phone. "Early rounds tomorrow. Marcus, you'll be all right getting back to your flat?" "I'll manage," Marcus said dryly. "I've been navigating London for a decade." "Right. Alex, you good?" "Fine," Alex said, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. Daniel left, and suddenly the noise of the pub seemed very far away. Marcus finished his whiskey, set the glass down with careful precision. "So," he said, "Alexandra Morrison, barrister at Morrison and Blackwood, Oxford, first-class honors. Youngest person to make senior associate in the firm's history. Workaholic, perfectionist, currently handling the Thornton fraud case that's all over the legal news." "You've done your research," Alex said, keeping her voice neutral even as her pulse quickened. "Daniel talks about his friends, a lot." Marcus leaned back, his posture relaxed but his gaze intense. "He left out some details, though. Such as the fact that you're even more formidable in person than your reputation suggests, and that you've been avoiding looking directly at me all evening, which is interesting given that we spent 2 hours debating Donahue v. Stevenson at that conference." "That was your cousin," Alex said, but the words came out weaker than she'd intended. "No," Marcus said quietly. "It wasn't. That was me. I'm qualified as both a barrister and a surgeon. I practiced law for 3 years before I went to medical school. The case law debate? That was us. You argued that the neighbor principle had been misapplied in modern tort cases. I disagreed. We ended up closing down the hotel bar." Memory flooded back, not just the debate, but the way the conversation had flowed, the intellectual sparring that had felt like foreplay. The moment at the end of the night when they'd stood outside the hotel and she'd almost invited him up to her room. But she'd been recovering from a brutal breakup, and he'd mentioned having to catch an early train, and the moment had passed. "I remember," she admitted. "Good." He stood, collected his coat. "Because I've been thinking about that night for 18 months, and now I'm going to be working at the same hospital as one of your best friends, which means I'll probably be seeing a lot more of you." He moved around the table, stopped beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive. "Here's the thing, Alexandra. I don't usually do this. I don't mix my professional life with my personal life. I don't date within friend groups. I don't pursue women who are clearly trying very hard to maintain professional distance." He paused. "But I'm making an exception, because I think you felt it too that night, and I think you're feeling it now." Alex's mouth had gone dry. She should shut this down, should remind him and herself of all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Instead, she found herself saying, "That's presumptuous." "Is it wrong?" The question hung between them. In the background, someone laughed. Glasses clinked. The world continued, oblivious. "No," Alex heard herself say. "It's not wrong." Marcus smiled, not triumphant, but something softer, more genuine. "Then have dinner with me tomorrow night, somewhere we can actually talk without an audience." "Marcus, just dinner, Alexandra. No pressure, no expectations, just 2 people who enjoy arguing with each other, sharing a meal." She should say no. Every instinct honed by years of careful professional boundary setting screamed at her to say no. But looking up at him, seeing the intelligence and humor and something else, something hungry and honest in his eyes, she felt something shift inside her chest. "Okay," she said. "Just dinner." "Just dinner," he agreed, but the way he said it suggested they both knew it was a lie. He left then, and Alex sat alone in the booth, staring at her empty glass. Her phone buzzed. A message in the group chat from Natasha. So, Marcus Ashford, thoughts? Alex typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on, he seems nice. Interesting addition to the group. The reply came immediately. Liar. I saw the way you two were looking at each other. Be careful, babe. He's got a reputation. What kind of reputation? The kind where he doesn't do relationships. Serial monogamy at best. Usually just, well, you know. Alex did know. She'd represented enough divorce cases to recognize the type. Brilliant, successful men who kept women at arm's length, who never let anyone close enough to matter. She should absolutely not have agreed to dinner. But as she gathered her things and headed out into the cold London night, she found herself already thinking about what to wear. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Tomorrow, 8 p.m. I'll pick you up. And Alexandra, wear something that isn't your armor. No power suits. Just you. She stared at the message, equal parts irritated and intrigued by his presumption. How had he even gotten her number? Daniel, she typed back. And I don't take wardrobe instructions. Fair enough. See you tomorrow. Alex walked home through the rain-slicked streets, past the late-night coffee shops and closing boutiques, past the young couples stumbling home from bars and the solitary figures hunched against the cold. Her flat in Holborn was only 20 minutes away, but tonight the walk felt longer, her mind racing with possibilities and warnings in equal measure. She thought about Marcus's hands, the way they'd moved when he talked. Surgeon's hands, steady and precise and capable of extraordinary things. She thought about Natasha's warning. He's got a reputation. She thought about her own reputation, the ice queen of Morrison and Blackwood, brilliant but cold, married to her work, emotionally unavailable. Maybe they deserved each other. Her phone buzzed one final time as she reached her building. Richard Morrison. Need to see you first thing Monday. We have a problem with the Thornton case. Someone's been leaking information to the defense. I think it's coming from inside chambers. Alex stared at the message, felt the weekend she'd been anticipating. Dinner with Marcus, lazy Saturday morning, maybe actually sleeping past 7, crumble into dust. She typed back, I'll be there at 8 a.m. But as she rode the elevator up to her 4th-floor flat, as she poured herself a glass of wine and stood at her window looking out over the city, she found her thoughts drifting not to the case, not to the leak, not to the professional crisis that awaited her on Monday. Instead, she thought about gray eyes and surgeon's hands and the way Marcus Ashford had looked at her when he said, I've been thinking about that night for 18 months. She thought about dinner tomorrow, and she thought about all the reasons she should cancel, and the one reason she wouldn't. Because for the first time in 3 years, since the engagement that had imploded so spectacularly she'd stopped believing in love altogether, Alexandra Morrison wanted something that wasn't about her career, wasn't about winning, wasn't about being the best. She wanted to know what would happen if she let someone in, even if it was the worst decision she'd ever made.